you're not matching that, I will pour into you my extra, but I'm not putting myself at a deficit or letting you like sap all my good energy, make me sad, make me upset, have me engaging in triggers and all of that, and talking down about people or talking gossiping or calling people like they name or fighting or any of that. I ain't doing it, bruh.
The internet anticipated the typical when Towanda Braxton and Sean went live. We are concentrating on communication that promotes happiness and peace. However, what people received was entirely different. Fans realized this wasn't about spirituality as soon as Towanda began talking about vibrations, frequency, and safeguarding her energy. No, Tamar Braxton was the subject of this, because Tamar somehow turns into a villain whenever Towanda discusses peace. Additionally, the tone completely changes from spiritual to straight-up shade when Sean enters. Sean spoke more than Towanda during that live. He gave lengthy remarks about energy, boundaries, and safeguarding frequencies, giving the impression that Tamar was a dark cloud hovering over their heads. They don't entertain rumor, he continued saying. They don't contribute to triggers or encourage negativity. But Towanda made it clear that this was about Tamar with every word, pause, and sidelong glance. It is always the case. Here's the twist, though. The internet recalled the true story while Sean boasted about how he shields his house from low vibrations. In actuality, Towanda Braxton was accused of using Tamar Braxton's credit card for years. 6 phone lines, unpaid debts, money that vanished, and bankruptcy documents that miraculously identified Tamar as a creditor. Not a month, not a bill, but years. After all of that, Towanda and Sean were secure enough to call Tamar an evil spirit. The irony and hypocrisy were so overwhelming that the entire comment area caught fire. Sean replied, "If you can't vibrate up, you have to vibrate out." And the same thing was repeated by everyone in attendance. So why didn't you use Tamar's wallet to vibrate out? Viewers became aware of something more profound at that point. Peace was not the focus of this live. This picture was a lie about. Towanda aspires to seem like the intelligent, healed, and balanced person. And Sean wants to come across as the devoted spouse who protects his house. However, every time they faced a challenge, they both danced around the truth. They allegedly went straight to Tamar if there was a tight budget or a bill that needed to be paid. However, Tamar ended up being called negative energy. The wedding saga is the wound that they have been unable to conceal for years. Towanda Braxton gave the impression that Tamar Braxton was absent, uninvolved, and unconcerned. She pretended to be innocent. She acted perplexed. She pretended that Tamar was the one acting out. However, it turned out later that Towanda had never invited her. Not by error, not by neglect. Even though she didn't want her there, she continued to inform others that Tamar was expected to contribute. Just imagine the treachery. Just think about the embarrassment. Imagine being aware that you were never accepted in the first place and seeing your own sister change the narrative. Fans quickly saw through this new live performance because of this. Peace was not the topic of conversation between Towanda and Sean. They were discussing guilt. They were attempting to avoid acknowledging that they had abused Tamar for years on a spiritual level, profited financially from her, emotionally shunned her, and continued to hold her responsible for all of their family's problems. But when the video leaked again, things got worse. The video in which Tamar...
It had nothing to do with Tamar's actions. It was about Towanda being called out at last and having to shift the responsibility. "We are not matching low vibrations," Sean stated. "We are opting for peace and love." In response, the internet said, "Then choose to pay the woman back." In actuality, Tamar Braxton has always been the family's scapegoat. Every time something goes wrong, her attitude, feelings, response, and triggers are to blame. In the meantime, Towanda is accused of abusing her resources, money, compassion, credit card, success, and presence, and becoming evil when Tamar required limits. Fans noticed the trend. For years, they have witnessed it. Towanda Braxton always presents herself as the serene spiritual sister, but her behavior, particularly when it comes to money, paints a very different picture. Additionally, everything appeared much more prejudiced and disrespectful when Sean entered the sister drama without having experienced their early years, knowing their past, or comprehending the origins. Healing was not the purpose of this live. The topic of this live event was image control. The goal of this live was to present the story before Tamar talked. However, the truth is already known on the internet. Calling someone a demon while holding their credit card is prohibited. That one life wasn't the end of the story. While they were stirring the commotion in real time, Braxton and Sean continued to talk, preach, and behave as though they were soaring above it. Additionally, viewers saw something they recognized. Wanda always manages to paint Tamar Braxton as a problem whenever she talks about keeping her peace, and Sean always portrays Tamar as a villain when he talks about mending, even though he didn't grow up with them. The years of rifts in the Braxton sisterhood, the generational traumas, and the childhood wounds were all without him. Nonetheless, he talks with the authority of a historian, an expert, and a first-hand account. Fans criticize him precisely because he is speaking from Towanda's perspective rather than the real one. However, everyone's memory of the actual receipts increased as they discussed energy more. The 4 years of bills, the credit card, the bankruptcy, the down payment, the unpaid funds, and the 6 phone lines. There was no spiritual strife here. Under the guise of emotional enlightenment, this was financial betrayal. The audience went crazy throughout the next segment of the live stream. Sean and Wanda demanded that they avoid connecting with negativity. They say they don't argue, gossip, or bring people down. But the entire show was a gradual, deliberate jab at Tamar, calling her evil, unstable, and draining in code. Even though they never mentioned her by name, every statement made reference to her. And that is the appearance of hypocritical gaslighting. Then Towanda uttered a statement that shocked the Braxton fanbase. "I have no obligation to cultivate your triggers." And fans had a straightforward query. Did Tamar have to take care of your phone bills? The essence of the problem was revealed in just a single sentence. Wanda didn't provide any of the things that Wanda expected in return. Healing, empathy, patience, and understanding. Not monetarily, not emotionally, and not in terms of relationships. Without respecting the bond that underpinned Tamar's kindness, she sought its benefits. The pattern gets more obvious the further you delve. Tamar turns into a villain when she establishes boundaries. Wanda is a victim every time she crosses one. But when the resurfaced clip replayed, that's when the actual explosion happened. The one in which Tamar confronts her over the down payment. When Tamar responded, "You told me you were waiting on a check," you can sense the anguish and incredulity in her voice. "You promised me you would reimburse me, and then I received bankruptcy documents." And Wanda chuckled. In fact, she chuckled. That chuckle was like a knife. It wasn't funny. It was conceit. It was entitlement. It was the easy assurance of someone who knew Tamar would keep silent in order to keep the family safe. However, people questioned why the internet wasn't quiet this time. Why did Towanda feel at ease taking out big loans from Tamar? Why did Towanda handle Tamar's credit card as though it were her own bank? In a bankruptcy case, why did Towanda involve her own sister? Why did Towanda find it amusing that she would never repay it? And why, in light of everything, did she think it was appropriate to refer to Tamar as a wicked spirit? The drama surrounding the wedding added fuel to the fire. Viewers recalled that Towanda informed everyone that Tamar had failed to appear. On camera, she sobbed. She brought it to life. She gave the impression that Tamar had deserted her. But that is no longer the case. Tamar never received an invitation. Not by chance, not by mistake, but on purpose. Towanda went live to discuss vibrations. The fans didn't buy it. It wasn't spirituality, it was spun. It was control over the narrative. Before Tamar could plant the truth, the ground needed to be cleared. Then Sean continued to speak, lecture, and sound like the spokesperson for the pain he had not experienced. The biggest warning sign of all is this man's involvement in sister turmoil, as fans put it best, because Sean was fueling a decades-old fire that he hardly understood while he talked about peace. Additionally, the more he spoke, the more he demonstrated that he was defending Towanda's decisions rather than the family. Towanda's attempt to make Tamar sound draining was the last blow. She said, "I'm not willing to accept that behavior in my life anymore." And admirers responded right away.
When she paid your expenses, was she worn out? When she assisted you in purchasing your home, was she draining? When she took on your financial burden for 4 years, was she worn out? When you needed her, was she exhausted, but not when she needed you? All of the patterns indicate the same thing. Tamar provided financial, public, and emotional benefits to Towanda Braxton. The truth is complicated, but as soon as Tamar refused to take responsibility for Wanda's labeling her as toxic, however, it's easy. This has nothing to do with bad spirits. It has nothing to do with frequency. Peace is not the issue here. It has to do with responsibility. Towanda is unwilling to acknowledge her actions. Tamar is sick of taking the blame, and Sean wants to protect her from it. The audience could clearly see the performance at the end of the live stream. This was not therapeutic. It was concealed. There was no serenity here. It was projection. This was not a sisterhood. It was undermined. This is the reason this tale is going viral on the internet, because the reality that Tamar Braxton has been dealing with for years is suddenly visible to everyone. You cannot shout evil spirit while holding money that you have never repaid.